did buy some new books. Sorry, I heard something. Anyway, yeah, I bought some new books. I want to show. Also some ones that I've been reading. Yeah, some books that I've been reading. It's mainly about John Locke, Lockean liberalism and stuff like that. I think I finished reading this one, right? Nature of God. I'm sorry, I'm kind of tired. The Nature of Government by Peter Stephens. This is Lockean Liberalism for Our Next Civil Crisis. This one is, I haven't started this one yet, but it touches on the same theme. This is God, Locke, and Equality, Christian Foundations in Locke's Political Thought by Jeremy Waldron. Looks like that. Basically, this one, I guess it goes over, like, similar to this book called God, Locke, and Liberty by Joseph LeConte. Looks like this. I finished reading this one, so I guess it touches, like this other one, I think goes over the same things that this one goes over. The importance of, like, his Christian convictions for his liberalism. And this one he did a good job showing, like, showing all that, the importance of his Christian values of his liberalism, and how you cannot separate them from his liberalism, and that how he's also influenced by the Roman Catholic Erasmus. He was like a Christian humanist, and he goes over like he's pretty much like as far as a culture, like obviously it doesn't favor like a sort of atheistic liberalism or something. I don't want to say atheistic liberalism, but a non-Christian liberalism kind of thing, because of the presuppositions of his liberalism being from like Christian religion, and then so I think he does a pretty good job showing you the importance of that, and then the distortions that certain secular historians cause because the way they interpret Locke and his liberalism or so. And I think these other two books, like this one I read, The Unvarnished Doctrine, Locke Liberalism and the American Revolution by Stephen Dorwitz. Looks like this. This book and this one, Locke in America, The Moral Philosophy of the Founding Era by Jerome Hoyler. Looks like this. Take a little bit. It's basically like, I read only a little bit of this one, but I finished this one. But both of these books basically go over showing how Locke's liberalism, and as they define it, like without, I guess, distortions from the secular historians or so, or secular liberals, I guess. That basically Locke's liberalism was the foundational liberalism or so. Yeah, to the Republic and the Revolution or so. And so this one, just want to say that that I did find it interesting, you know. The other one I finished, the one I was talking about, this short one right here. I mean, it's pretty good. I like this. Almost basically the same thing. Yeah, Christian religion or so. Maybe says, like he's talking about hierarchy. I don't know. I think he says, let's look at hierarchy of natural laws, equality. He says Aristotle in his Politics described man, quote, as the in-between being. Man is neither beast nor God, end quote. The Hebrews, of course, saw things the same way as the Greeks. From the beginning to the end, God reinforces this most fundamental hierarchy. Genesis' account of creation makes clear that man isn't good, and it draws a clear distinction between man and every other created thing. And it talks about Romans 8, describing 3 resurrections or so. So the first is for God, or for Jesus, who is God incarnate. The second for man. The third for the rest of nature. That's one reason, by the way, that nature is teaching us about God. Paul says it, quote, waits eagerly for the revealing, i.e. the resurrection of the sons of God, end quote. So nature itself can finally have its resurrection too. And then it says that man requires hierarchy. Without hierarchy, there is no equality. If there was no God, some men would have to become gods. Godless systems, fascism, communism, never produce equality. Some man or group of men has godlike powers over other men. And it kind of goes over like differences of like, I don't know, they mention some other forms of liberalism, which to me means that, I guess to me it's like not all liberalism is the same, right? That it's all different. What is this? It says like, what was? It just says like that man does require hierarchy. Therefore, if all men are created equal, there must be a God. If there is no God, someone else will arise and fill the societal, political, and metaphysical vacuum God left. With godlike powers, a ruler is above everyone else. No one else is his equal in this fundamental sense. To John Locke and our founding fathers, a liberal is, quote, someone who believes that man is naturally free and equal, end quote. To quote Professor Ruth Grant in her book, John Locke's Liberalism, because a Lockean liberal believes in an individual's natural rights, he also necessarily believes in God. He's not necessarily a Christian, but he's no atheist. For Locke and for liberals, the hierarchy inherent in equality requires God. So basically, it's like a liberal doesn't have to be a Christian, but he has to like believe in God in some sense, right? Or God ultimately for its equality. So a liberal by definition believes in God. For you conservative Christians out there, it's a kind of fun to say it, right? Of course, this isn't true about what's called liberalism today, or about what's called conservatism today. For that matter, later we'll compare the philosophical underpinnings of Lockean liberalism and modern versions of liberalism and conservatism. So yeah, basically, not all liberalism is the same, right? Now, Locke doesn't say that a culture acknowledging the rights of man before God must acknowledge the Christian God. Although Locke was a Christian, he didn't believe that a nation needed to have a Christian heritage or understanding in order to function well under natural law. Yeah, but this is the problem here that I have. If you're going to say, like, because this comes from like these sort of liberal secularists who say that America's God can be anyone's God. But that's not true, because not all liberalism is the same. Because what you say about the God of America, you also say about its liberalism. And so that's why I'm saying that if as these books have shown, right, if Locke's liberalism is the founding liberalism, then there technically is only one God for America and its liberalism, as far as what its presuppositions are based off of, which are the Christian convictions of this liberal tradition, which is where the humanist tradition of Christian religion is based off of, which is not the same as secular humanism, because I bought more books on humanism, right? Like from me. Yeah, I should have probably showed those off too. Maybe in another video. I don't know, or maybe I'll add it on later. Show you the humanist books based on Christian tradition, sort of say like Erasmus and stuff like that. And so not all liberalism is the same, because I know I listen to like this book as well as pointing out to the problems of certain types of liberalism. And so that's why I say, because if you're going to say that America's God can be anyone's God, then American liberalism can be anyone's liberalism, technically. Because the presuppositions are what the most important. What is the foundational liberalism of the country? And obviously, it would be exclusively the Christian kind because of Locke. And so it does presuppose the same God of, basically the God of the American liberalism is the same God of Locke, and that's the same God of the Bible, the same God of basically Christian religion, same God of covenant, right? Like a binding agreement, sort of say. And so it does tie into exclusively this one God. And so that's why I said that not all liberalism is the same, I guess. But again, it's you cannot appeal to a broad tradition of liberalism because it's not all the same, and they have different presuppositions, and so they cause I don't know, it's like they go different directions. It's An anti-Christian liberal obviously doesn't want a Christian nation, but they'll try to base it off this liberalism that maybe try to, I don't know what's the word. To try to use liberalism to get out of the, having to defend the Christian presuppositions, so to say. So the person would progress more towards more of like an anti-Christian liberal state, so to say, or a non-Christian liberal state. But the Christian liberal, obviously, like Locke, will remain within like a Christian tradition of Christian religion because of his Christian convictions, and so that obviously that kind of liberal will progress in a different direction when he, right, having more of a pro-Christian state, so to say, encouraging religion. Because I don't see how theism is religion. Like, how is theism religion? It's not. Like, it's God minus religion, God with human rationality or something. Even pluralism itself is not religion. It's just a mixture of different religions, right? And it's like all these different gods. And so not all of their gods can be America's God. Because what are the principles, the foundation of their liberalism, It's like you basically have no God because they're all equally valid, But then what about like when as I listen to them, how they argue against like Marxist liberals, because I don't like some of them, I guess they're classical liberals or some American liberals, like trying to say that communists are religious people because I guess because they think that communist faith is a religion because it was at one point called the communist faith or something. The Communist Manifesto was called the communist faith, therefore it's a religion. I said, but you can sort of do that with liberalism as well, because liberalism is also a faith. So that's what I'm saying. So if you're going to accuse the Marxist liberal of distorting the founding liberalism or the founding principles, right, of the American liberalism, then you can sort of accuse the anti-Christian liberal of distorting the foundations of Lockean liberalism of the country. If this truly what these books say, like that Locke's liberalism is the founding one, then it technically is one form that is being presupposed and not a broad tradition of liberalism, so to say. Again, though, I'm not an expert on all of that, nor am I claiming to be an expert. I'm just saying that some of the ideas I'm getting, because he obviously going to go over, like he did go over, like the problems with modern liberalism and stuff, and various forms of liberalism that actually probably undo your republic or so, the foundation. So that just shows you that it cannot be all liberalism is good, or even consistent with the founding form of it. And like here, he kind of stumbles greatly here because he just goes over all the typical things of how America's not a Christian nation, but he goes through like lengths to prove that it's mainly Christian. But he does, for some reason, he thinks that I guess Christians have to like defend all these principles as non-Christian principles when it's not true. He just talks about like how we're not a Christian nation, never were. He bases it on history, theology, and political science. And he talks about those founding fathers. He mentions them here. He says they were all he says the majority were Christian, but he says mostly, but the rest of them were like deists or something. He says that Franklin, Jefferson, Hamilton, Madison were all deists, right? And he just talks about George Washington not having communion, and he cites the Treaty of Tripoli. He thinks this is the historical reason. And so he thinks and he goes over the problems with Calvinism, natural law, because of total depravity and stuff like that. But you don't have to defend those ideas like separation of church and state, rights of conscience, religious liberty, even the pluralism. I told you, like all of that does not have to be defended, presupposing non-Christian principles. Because I just showed you, if you read these books, they'll show you like how the liberalism, the Christian values of Locke's liberalism, and the American founding presupposes Christian religion, right? Which is what the founders stress: true Christian religion, or true religion, right? Not true religion in general, like it's really talking about like religion that is basically foundational to the republic and sustaining the republic, right? Which is based on those principles that they ascribe to deism, which can be very easily accounted for by dissenting Christians, because like this book was showing, right? The Enlightenment and Religion, the Myths of Modernity by S.J. Barnett just questions the influence of secular, Enlightenment being more the reason why there was such a movement for Enlightenment, Like he just talks about he focuses mainly on Italy, France, and England. This is the Enlightenment studies have been asserting that there was a vibrant theist movement that formed the intellectual solvent of the 18th century. The central claim of the book is that the immense ideological appeal of the traditional birth of modernity myth has meant that the actual lack of deists has been glossed over, and that there's a misleading historical view. And as let me see, what are some of the things that he says, basically, he mentions Catholic Jansenists, Catholic dissenters, and also here in this chapter 5, Italy, Roman tyranny, and radical Catholic opposition. And it just goes over the Catholic dissenters in the Italian peninsula provides some similarities with the struggles in France, but the very different political religious context of the Italian peninsular means that the differences tend to outweigh similarities. Differences aside, the point of this chapter is to illustrate that broad political religious struggle, rather than the actions of the philosophies, provided the most significant challenge to the status quo of Enlightenment Europe. And talks about how it's very easy to confuse, how historians very easily confuse deists. They confuse radical Christians for deists. You know what I mean? And so it's very easy to confuse the two. I guess because of the radical beliefs, he thinks that Jefferson is he thinks he's a deist or so. He cited these founders as deists, right? But at heart, even if you could, I would say at heart they're just being dissenting Christians, because deism has no religion, and yet they think that religion is important to social order and the republic and sustaining it and things like that. Even Locke's liberalism is with religion, right, with Christian religion. So it's possible that deists could side with Christians based on the shared common principles they had. And so it's not really that deism sustains the republic, but that religion. But again, what accounts for all of the things that they associate with being exclusively theistic principles, right, which are the principles that I listed, right? And so what dissenting Christian religion can account for those. So it can give you God, right, obviously the God of Christ, dissenting principles, which are the things you ascribe to deism, and it can also give you religion. And so that is the advantages of dissenting Protestant religion. And now this book is it's basically easy to confuse the two groups together. And they're providential theists, some of them were counted as providential theists, but some of them were actually Christian. And basically, again, these other books have shown in Locke's liberalism, how historians kind of distort it, and they distort those aspects of Enlightenment. And so it was a very good little short book. I have another book over there, I think, touches on the same subject, but I didn't show it. And then the other book I was talking about, this one I read a little while back. It's called Everyone Orthodox to Themselves by John Coleman. It's John Locke and his American students. It just goes over Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin. They all basically, the people that he cited as deists were obviously in agreement with Locke, the Christian, and his liberalism. And so that's why I'm saying that it's not the case that Christians sided with deists on separation. That it could be the case that deists sided with dissenting Christians, because there were so many in the majority. And then, as this book showed again, that it was dissenting Christians, I think, mainly contribute to the influence of the Enlightenment movement actually gaining steam, and then how the Voltaire and more of the deist Enlightenment was able to kind of have some influence because of that, or so, or they built off of it, or so. And then what was the other thing? Yeah, because I was reading a little bit of this book, Reformed America, Middle and Southern States, 1783 to 1837, by Fred Hood. It looks like this. I was on this part. I just want to read briefly what I'm talking about, on separation. Here it says, in the final analysis, this establishment, as part of the expanded concept of religious liberty, was believed to be necessary to the ultimate success of Protestant Christianity. Unlike James Madison, who assumed that the sects would remain divided and unpowerful, the Reformed believed that this establishment would be the prelude the prelude, the prelude to greater uniformity and a greater influence. This conviction was, of course, grounded in the belief of a universal acknowledgement of the authority of Scripture. This was joined with a further optimistic assumption that, quote, truth needs only an equal advantage with error to gain an eternal victory over it, end quote. Armed with these convictions, the Reformed anticipated that this establishment would provide the background for massive surrender to the overpowering influence of the gospel. United under the authority of the Scripture, Protestants would reign in America. And so he says that as in the case of religious liberty generally, this establishment in the Reformed mind was not understood as a separation of church and state, nor was it understood that the state would remain indifferent in its attitude towards religion. So this establishment was often viewed as nothing more than the government's promise of neutrality towards the various Protestant denominations. Religion was believed to have been freed from the control of the state, so that it understood as Protestant Christianity could have a greater impact on the common life of the nation than was possible with an establishment. Paradoxical as it may seem, the Reformed held that this establishment brought religion and civil government closer together rather than separating them. It was in fact the legal provisions for this establishment that made America, quote, a truly Christian country and nation, end quote. For in this way America professed the religion, quote, revealed in the Scriptures, end quote. So I'll stop there, but that's basically what I'm saying. It's how you interpret things, like separation. It's not really separation from religious principles. It could be from like an establishment of religion, like a jurisdiction of a church, like an institution, right? Which is the only thing that makes sense to me, because having separation in that sense, can prevent any church, whether it be an imperial church or a dissenting church, from being the imperial Christian religion of America, where you'd have your like dogmas set and your form of worship dictated. And so obviously they avoided that through separation, but I tell you that separation itself can be considered a Christian principle. As far as like when I'm saying like whether the founding, because it's easy to confuse the deists for the Christians, for dissenting Christians, with radical deists or so. Like since it's easy to confuse the two groups, it wouldn't be hard to interpret the founders as basically being hard dissenting Christians. Like in this book, right, The Founders in the Bible, by Carl Richard, it goes over all their disagreements and agreements, and especially on morality and Christian ethics, how true religion is needed, but it means true Christian religion, because that is what is foundational to the Republic. And I am presupposing like it's liberalism, even separation, the very things that you're ascribing to deists, I'm ascribing it to dissenting Christians. And because deism is not religion, and neither is pluralism. Pluralism is like, I don't know what it is, but it's not really religion. It's just a mixture of all sorts of religions, which could be contradictory to the Republic, even detrimental to the Republic. The only religion that is foundational to the country is dissenting Protestant religion. And so that's what I'm trying to get at here, especially with the Lockean liberalism being foundational to the Republic. It shows that only the one God of the Republic is the God of Christ, and that is the God of Locke, the God of the Bible. And so you see how America is a Christian nation only through the following a certain path, right? Like it's not everyone's Christian nation, but it is the Christian nation that is needed, right? So this goes over all their, like it doesn't matter if you want to take the approach of whether they were theists or not. They do not favor what was the thing? Like as far as like this book as well, like it shows how the Enlightenment was not exactly against religion. It was just mainly against the authoritarian kind, which is like the imperial religion, right, with the monarchies and the imperial churches, right? I mean, that's really why they even had Catholic dissenters or so. That's what the book went over, because of the corruptions and abuses and despotisms of that system, even theocratic despotism, right? The problems of those things. And then even, what else? Yeah, this book, This one, the religious rights of the First Amendment. Fake founding fathers quotes examined. Were the founders atheists and theists? David Miller, called into question those badly paraphrased founding quotes that secularists like to use to distort the nation as a Christian nation. And then this one's the case for America's Christian Heritage by Gary DeMar. It deals with the Treaty of Tripoli and all this other stuff, And that's what I'm saying. As far as the Treaty of Tripoli, if I understood it correctly, basically, you can't really use it to prove that position about the government not founded upon Christian nation or so. Christian religion, I think. And he even goes over the guy who actually said it, and it wasn't John Adams, but it's he also proves that through the signing of other treatises, that you can't really ascribe everything. That is, at least the idea that I got was that you couldn't ascribe everything to, if that's the word ascribe, right? You cannot lump all the beliefs that were in the treaty, right, to the founders, as far as believing every word that it said. It's because it's I forgot what it said, conceal your language or something, I'm not sure, but basically it's because they signed other treaties. I gives examples, they signed other treaties as well that had the Trinity in it, and it read like a confession or so. Benjamin Franklin and John Adams signed that one as well, but they're not Trinitarian, and so that's what I'm saying, that you can't really say that because they signed the creed, therefore ascribe all the beliefs in that treaty. That doesn't mean that they ascribe to everything that it says. I don't know the purposes of the treaty, why they would sign it, but it probably was not because it said, that very specific thing. And then you see how, I think it went over, because I haven't read the whole thing, but I read bits of that part. And so how, the other Treaty of Tripoli that came afterwards completely omitted the thing that it said against Christian religion. And so, it wasn't even there. And so... Basically, it was an insignificant part, basically, not that important. And so that's basically some of the thoughts I wanted to give on Locke's liberalism and things like that in these books. And so they're pretty good at going over all that, and then going over some of the distortions from some historians that they misinterpret Locke or so. And how foundational his liberalism is to the country. And then these books that I bought, these books here, so I found this one. It's by Sekman Brukovich, The Puritan Origins of the American Self. It's like this. And where is this? Because it looked interesting, I just bought it. Because it ties it to the religious consciousness of the country or so. Because I haven't read it yet, so. It just talks about some of the concepts. It's just it's 5 chapters, I guess. It's the first one is Puritanism and the Self. 2, the vision of history. 3, the elect nation in New England. 4, from hermeneutics to symbolism. 5, the myth of America. And they give you an appendix to Colin Maver's Life of John Winthrop. So I haven't read it yet, but I'll read it later. And this one is it's about the history of republics and Republicans. It's The End of Kings by William R. Everdell. Things like that. It's because of the history of the Republican government and stuff like that. And I found this other book on Locke. This one's John Locke's Political Philosophy and the Hebrew Bible by Yichil J.M. Leiter. I guess it goes over, it looked really interesting. I guess it goes over, his references to the Hebrew Bible and New Testament are almost completely absent. And it says, it says, John Locke's treatises on government make frequent reference to the Hebrew Bible, while references to the New Testament are almost completely absent. Today's scholarship has not addressed this surprising characteristic of the treatise. In this book, Yichil, I'm sorry if I mispronounced it, Yichil Leiter offers a Hebraic reading of Locke's fundamental political texts. In doing so, he formulates a new school of thought in Lockean political interpretation, and challenges existing ones. It shows how a grasp of the Hebraic underpinnings of Locke's political theory resolves many of the problems as well as scholarly debates that are inherent in reading Locke. More than a book about the political theory of John Locke, this volume is about the foundational ideas of Western civilization. While focused on Locke's Hebraism, it demonstrates the persistent relevance of the biblical political narrative to modernity. It will generate interest among students of Locke in political theory, philosophy, and early modern history, and within Bible study communities. So it looked really good, so I bought it. It was kind of expensive, but I thought it was worth it. And so I found this other one called Law and Religion in Colonial America: The Dissenting Colonies by Scott Douglas Gerber. Just like that. And it just goes over basically, religion, law, and the dissenting colonies. As I said, America is based mainly on dissenting Christian religion. Not really this dissenting pluralism. It's like there's one God, there's one liberalism that is foundational to the country, and one religion that is foundational to the principles of liberty and those kind of things. It's just a particular form of Christianity that is, I can tell, it's hard to spot or so. Like it's hard to see because of the imperial Christian religion and the anti-Christian liberal, right? They kind of distort it by appealing to theism and saying that it is not Christian, either it is not Christian. But let me see. This one is the Protestant Mind of English Reformation from 1570 to 1640 by Charles H. George and Catherine George. It's just a generic cover like that. And I guess it is essential to the ethos of America because it comes from England and stuff like that, and these kinds of people, this kind of culture. Goes over that's what I'm saying. It ties into how America is Christian. You got let me parse this out. It's got 3 major parts. The basic structure of the English Protestant mind. 1, the English Protestant human nature, problem of salvation, sin, faith, predestination, and the conclusion. And 2, the English Protestant society, the problem of the Christian society, the Christian brotherhood, Christian equalitarianism, the Protestant saint. Part 2, the social and institutional structure of the English Protestant mind. It says 3 is English Protestant economic theory, the world and its callings. And it goes over these other 3 chapters. And 4, English Protestant economic theory, the challenge of capitalism. There's a few other things. Calvinism to capitalism, just asking a question. And 5, the political thought of the church, the crisis of Reformation. The crisis of Reformation. This is the clergy as political theorists, church and state. And 6, the political thought of the church, the dilemma of modernity. In this part, it goes over divine right and sovereignty, law, parliament and the political classes, nationalism and war. And 7, the English Protestant and the family, sex, and Christianity. We're just talking about the status of the wife, the child, and the servant, and marriage. And then 8 is the English Protestant and the church. And it talks about the historical settings, the nature of the church, the ministry, the scriptural foundation, sacraments, ceremonies, the church government. In part 3, it talks about Protestantism and revolution. Number 9, the English Protestant and the Via Media. And it goes over the problem of variety and unity, the Puritans, the broad and middle way. So it looked pretty interesting as well. I mean, all these books look interesting, that's why I bought them. They deal with the subjects that I'm interested in right now. And this last book is American Unitarianism and the Protestant Dilemma. It's The Conundrum of Biblical Authority by Lydia Wilski Ciolo. If I said it correctly, looks like that. And it just goes over Unitarianism, its influence, because it's not just Calvinism, it's also the Hebrew Bible, which is based on different religious ethos, even though it's foundational to the Christian religion. And then it's talking about Unitarianism, right? This talks about let me see. Let's see, it gives you the introduction, Unitarianism and the Protestant Dilemma. This is one. The first chapter is Protestantism and the Bible, from the Reformation to the American Unitarians. And then chapter 2 is William Ellery Channing and the Liberalizing of Biblical Authority. 3, what, quote, gospel, unquote, in the Bible. Andrew Norton and the Language of Biblical Truth. Chapter 4 is the opening of the canon. Theodore Parker and the transformation of religious authority. 5, A Practical Spirit. Frederick Henry Hedge and the Universal Church. And chapter 6 is When the Levee Breaks, Unitarian Experimentation with Authority in the late 19th century. And it gives you an epilogue, Seeking Authority in Contemporary Unitarian Universalism. So it looked interesting as well. He was also talking about, like, I think biblical Unitarians, but it was kind of pricey too, that book, but I don't know, I liked the subject. And so anyway, I hope you find these books interesting, and if you like my videos, please like and subscribe. Thank you, and God bless. Some of the humanist books, the Christian humanist books that I bought. This one's Erasmus and the Footsteps of Paul by Greta Grace Croker, if I said that correctly. I want to show them off right quick. This one's Humanists and Protestants from 1500 to 1900. Basil Hall wrote it. And this one, I think, is from Roman Catholic Henry de Lubac. The Drama of Atheist Humanism. In the case for Christian humanism. In the Christian tradition. Some of the contents. Synod of Freedom on the Freedom of Conscience. A thorough examination during the gathering held in the year 1582 in the city of Freetown. This is translated, edited, annotated by Gerrit Vogt, I think that's how you pronounce it. I think it's a synod that was like an imaginary synod, had Calvin in it, and you know what I mean. I think it was similar to Plato's. I forget what it's called, Dialogues maybe. God Created Humanism, the Christian Basis of Secular Values, by Theo Hobson. Last one is Fatal Discord, Erasmus, Luther, and the Fight for the Western Mind by Michael Massing. It's a pretty thick book. Goes over the history of this over here, and that's all I wanted to say and show off these books right here on Christian humanism.